Hello, my name is Andy and I am the village idiot, and I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. Welcome back to West Lindsey. Now, if you followed the North Lincolnshire series right from the beginning, you'll remember Owston Ferry. And Owston Ferry, you can see it across the water here, across the River Trent. That's the pumping engine that we met in that episode. Well, this time we're on the other side of the river. Now, if you recall in the Owston Ferry episode, part of it was known as West Kinnard's or West Kinnard's Ferry. This is its eastern counterpart. This is East Ferry. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Today we're in East Ferry as our journey up the eastern bank of the River Trent in West Lindsey continues to the north. This is a village protected from flooding along part of its length by a huge concrete flood wall, similar to the one we saw on the other side of the Trent. You may recall Owston Ferry's flood wall on the opposite bank. Here we are situated 6 miles west of Scotter and 6 miles north of Gainsborough. The population of the civil parish includes that of Wildsworth, and at the 2011 census that was 204. East Ferry was founded in the 13th century around another ferry crossing. I swear you've heard this one before. The ferry here was only in operation until the 1940s, stopping much earlier than some of its counterparts. I would imagine this is largely due to the construction of Kidby Bridge, making it unviable. Much like Owston Ferry over the water, East Ferry had a previous name, East Kinnard's or Kinnard's Ferry. Kinnard and King's has been the name for this ferry over the Trent since early times. It's believed to be a contraction of King Edward's Ferry. When Edward the Confessor sought help from his allies in Northumbria, he may have effected a passage over the Trent at this place. In 1872, East Ferry was described as a township in Scotter Parish, with a population of just 104, meaning it's pretty much doubled its size in just over 150 years. An ancient log boat, similar to the one found at Hasholme, was discovered here in 1903. It was once in Scunthorpe Museum, but has now been lost. East Ferry has very little in the way of amenities. There's no shops, and the nearest pub is in Lorton, that being the Ingram Arms. However, we do have an old phone box with a defibrillator. Bus-wise, the same services that run through East Stockwith and Wildsworth call here too. Demographically, East Ferry sports a very low population density. In a short while, we'll see why. 16.73 it comes in at. 98% of people here are white British, and there are very few retired folk. This is a community dominated by commuters. £342,000 is the average price you'd be expected to pay for a house in East Ferry. So I'm led to believe, thanks to a sign outside, that white building there is a former church. It's certainly not a church now, it doesn't look like one. I think it's been converted into a house. But yes, that apparently was at one time a religious building. Hello! That wasn't the only religious building East Ferry has ever had either. There was a medieval chapel in the village dedicated to St Lawrence, which was described as decayed in the 16th century. It survived though into the late 18th century. There were a further 2 chapels, one to St Mary rebuilt around 1800 and the other was for the Primitive Methodists. Now, one thing that sets East Ferry apart from some of its neighbours, the likes of Wildsworth and Warkrith and East Stockwith, is that its parish boundaries don't hug the side of the River Trent. They go a long way over to the east, and they include part of that wood you can see over there. Now that is a massive wood, it's huge, and it belongs mostly to the parish of Lorton. But to finish this episode off later, I'll be driving into that wood because some of it falls within East Ferry. Now we come to the Trent at the village's northern end. You can get a good view of Owston Ferry from here, and where I was standing in that episode, next to the pub. This is the area where the ferry landing would have been, although it's a little overgrown with trees, so I couldn't get close enough to see if there were any remains on this side. So rather frustratingly, I thought there was a riverbank path to walk back to the southern end of the village, but you can't access the path from the northern end for some reason, so I'm just walking back through the village looking for a way to get over onto the footpath, but I haven't seen a way there yet. I may end up walking back all the way through the village, which is going to make the Strava map interesting, but ho-hum. I did eventually find somewhere to access the bank of the Trent, but it was a long way back through the village before I could. Nonetheless, this area was great for a few views across to Owston Ferry. Speaking of viewing things, the tidal bore known as the Trent Ager, which we learned about in Morton, is often observed on this stretch of the river. Now for the war memorial, which was unveiled on the 23rd of August 1921. It stands at the edge of the village alongside the bank of the Trent. It's a rough granite cross on a 3-step plinth, remembering 3 local men who perished in World War I, with inscriptions on the front face. Other than that though, East Ferry has very little else apart from what I've shown you, although you do get a great look at something over the river that I missed out in the Owston Ferry episode. So there's something that never got a mention in the Owston Ferry episode, didn't even put it in the picture, but thinking about it, there's a windmill over there. Don't know whether the camera can pick it up, it's a long way away, but yeah, there you go. That is a windmill over the Trent at Owston Ferry. Nearby to East Ferry is Lorton Forest, commonly known as Lorton Woods. East Ferry's boundaries cover a sizable portion of this thick pine woodland. It's mostly privately owned, but it's leased to the Forestry Commission, and it's they who manage it on a day-to-day basis. The forest is in fact man-made, and it was created in the 20th century on what was previously just a sandy heath. The main access points for walking trails can be found in Lorton, a mile or so away to the southeast. In the Lorton episode, we'll be taking a look at some of those. For now though, this is just a fleeting visit, accessing the forest as we have via the only public road through it. So in places, Lorton Wood is very thick forest, and it's a huge place. It's really, really big. If you look on the map and see how far it stretches up to Scotter in the north, and then obviously to the south it comes down to Lorton, which is the village that way, and that's a parish we'll be covering soon. And like I said earlier, part of this wood does fall within Lorton, that's why it's called Lorton Wood, but a lot of it falls within East Ferry, and that's the part I'm in right now. But we're pretty much done at this point. There's not really much more to show you as far as East Ferry goes. There is a campsite of some description that way, so I'm just going to drive up there and see if there is anything actually up there worth taking a shot of. So we'll sign off here, and this has been the parish of East Ferry, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out. The campsite in question is Sunflower Park, described on its website, which I've linked, as being set within a 5-acre plot including paddocks, a well-stocked fishing lake, a private woodland walk, a children's play area, dog kennel hire and open pasture land. To finish, we'll drive through the woods to Lorton. We'll be seeing this place again very soon.